We're good? Excellent. Hello and welcome, both you in person and those online. My name is Nick. I'm the Program Manager for Risk Education at DRC here in Ukraine, and I'll be today your moderator. Before I pass the floor to the key speakers here, I'll just run down some housekeeping matters for you. This venue, first of all, is a shelter. So if there will be any air raid alarms, you are free to stay in place and we will continue with the workshop. The toilets will be on the ground floor, so you can just leave through the door that you arrived in and you can take the elevator to the ground floor for that. Smoking is done outside. There is a sign before the entrance. For those who are here in person, if you need a translation, you just put your headphones on. There's only one channel. If you don't need them, you just put them off. And for those in the online platform, there is an option in the Zoom platform for either English or Ukrainian. The workshop is recorded, just for everybody to know. If you need Wi-Fi password, they should be pasted on the pillars within the venue. Coffee breaks and lunch will be provided here as well, so there's no need for you to leave. And if there's any issues that you have, just raise your hand or find somebody who has a DRC logo on them, and they will help you out, okay? And so that concludes sort of the logistical things, and I'll pass the floor first to Roxana, the head of HDP at DRC, for the opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Nick. Sorry, is this? Yeah. Thank you so much, Nick, and hello, everyone. I would just like to extend a warm welcome to all of you here today for the Lessons Learned workshop on emergency explosive ordnance risk education in Ukraine. I am delighted to see so many of you here today, to see many familiar faces as well, both in person and online. We have around 150 practitioners from various government agencies, UN, international and national NGOs, companies and academia. So we are delighted to have so many people joining us from, not just from Ukraine, but from approximately 18 different countries as well, for those online. So thank you so much for coming and for actively participating in the discussions over these next 2 days. It has been a year and a half since the escalation of the war in Ukraine on 24th of February of last year. And during this time, explosive ordnance has devastated the country and become ubiquitous to the daily lives of many people. Regrettably, still not a day goes by without an accident, without a casualty. And let me take this opportunity to express my deepest condolences to all those that have lost their lives, their limbs, their loved ones, their livelihoods because of this tragic war. From the very early days, the growing risk education community in Ukraine has worked tirelessly to educate people on the dangers of explosive ordnance and also on the rules of safe behavior. And our risk education efforts are now reaching more than half of the country and in some cases neighboring countries as well. We're also constantly finding new ways to deliver on our mandate, constantly looking for new digital tools, new informational materials, creating new content for risk education sessions, and we're constantly growing every single day. So I would just like to take this opportunity to thank every single one of you for the extraordinary work that you have done so far. So with so much going on, DRC has thought it is a good time to reflect on the past 18 months of our work, and we've decided to organize this workshop. The design was done in a collaborative manner with contribution from all the members of the EORE advisory group and also all the mine action operators in Ukraine. Therefore, we hope that the discussions that we are starting now will be relevant both for stakeholders in Ukraine, but also for the community of practice in other contaminated countries around the world. Therefore, I would just like to warmly encourage you to actively participate and share your thoughts. So thank you very much once again, and I would now like to give the floor to Colonel Ruslan Beregulia from the National Mine Action Authority Secretariat.
Дякую, Роксана.
Hello, Roxana. And first and foremost, let me express gratitude for inviting us to take part in this event. I would like to present here the slides on humanitarian demining in the context of Russia's aggression.
Шановні присутні, ваші
And so in this presentation, we will see the national approach to humanitarian demining, including the challenges arising from the full-scale invasion.
всі ви знаєте, що 20
As you all are aware, on the 24th of February 2022, the Russian Federation has started its full-scale invasion on Ukraine using all kinds of weapons, some of them banned by international conventions, and because of that, a huge share of Ukraine's territory is polluted by explosive objects. So right now, all the territories which saw active combat operations and territories under current occupation and the territories attacked by artillery are considered as polluted by mines. So in total, it is 160,000 square kilometers of land and 14,000 square kilometers of water areas have to be surveyed. So this land includes the territories where active combat operations took place and which have been under occupation. So after all the combat operations are over, after the sovereignty of Ukraine is fully restored, the demining effort will unfold fully. So the pollution with mines has impact on the civilian life, the development of agriculture, industry, and overall the socioeconomic growth in these regions. So in Ukraine, in total, there are 15 millions who are indirectly beneficiaries of demining activities, and therefore all the efforts are made to quickly respond to explosive remnants of war, and also the humanitarian demining is underway in the territories where it is possible.
щільне забруднення
So, quite intense pollution of the explosives, and the Russian Federation violating the conventions and norms. This creates lots of incidents for civilians, and especially civilians in agriculture. According to our data, since February 24, 2022, the incidents associated with explosive objects killed 242 people and injured 496. 75% of incidents happen with landmines, and the numbers unfortunately keep growing, and we have to update these numbers daily. And also thanks to the experience we got, we managed to quickly organize information campaigns to reduce the exponential growth of
Трохи технічні проблеми.
So in this slide, I'm showing some examples of the most dangerous EOD faced by Ukraine's humanitarian deminers, and especially dangerous is unexploded ordnance, which results in injuries in civilians and also the blockage of some civilian infrastructure. So also because of the use of remote mining and also the use of cluster ammunition, and because of the low quality of the old mines used, the self-liquidation mechanisms are not always available, and also because of the magnet field sensors, these mines can only be destroyed remotely with the special equipment. So in Russian mines, we can see that quite often the mine is covered in plastics, and it makes the search for it more difficult. Also, one specific feature of the mining of the territories is that about 30% mines are installed in a way that they are impossible to be extracted traditionally, sometimes booby-trapped, and the intention is to create impossible conditions and to terrify civilian population. Now, here you can see some statistics about the types of EOD and a percentage. So the highest percentage here is unexploded ordnance, improvised explosive devices. Also, a big percentage of cluster munitions entail a huge territory that needs to be surveyed. So this requires huge resources from the demining groups. And also, when assessing the socioeconomic needs of the liberated territories, we can see that electricity, water, and heating infrastructure, critical industries, transport infrastructure, government, and agricultural lands need to be demined in the first place. And since there are certain priorities in these demining tasks, there are several stages defined. And the first stage includes a rapid response after the artillery and missile attacks, and also after the EOD incidents. And the intention is to find and destroy the unexploded ordnance and to ensure the necessary actions by the law enforcement. The second stage is operational response, the destruction of EOD on the liberated territories, to unblock the necessary infrastructure, transport, and to ensure access to social services and housing for the local population. And stage 3 is ensuring safe agricultural works, and this implies the discovery of EID and doing the service necessary for this task, and this in turn ensures food safety. So for these purposes, it's the sappers of the armed forces of Ukraine and also the State Emergency Service of Ukraine are used, but also sometimes there are international organizations operating under the supervision of the government authorities. So we already had such examples of successful cooperation also with the law enforcement. Stage 4 includes non-technical surveys according to the Ukrainian and international demining standards. The main intention here is to identify the possibly polluted and polluted territories and also the territories that can potentially contain some mine risks. So the certified operators are taking part in this work. Stage 5 is humanitarian demining. It includes the procedure of clearance of districts where active combat operations took place. This stage is performed by certified operators monitored by the National Mine Action Authority. And stage 4 is quality control of land clearance, and after this quality control, the operator transfers the territories to the government. This task ensures the safe use of the land and ensures the most effective demining of the territories. Also, let me mention that these stages can only happen in the territories where the command of the armed forces of Ukraine can confirm secure situation for demining. Right now, the tasks of stages 1 and 2 are performed by 226 teams or 1,000 personnel in total. So this is also happening in cooperation with local authorities, and thanks to that, almost 550,000 EODs were indicated and destroyed. So in total, this is happening on the territory of almost 80,000 square kilometers, and we were able to do the surveying of 164,000 hectares of land, 7.7 thousand kilometers of roads, and almost 3,000 kilometers of railway. Also, as a part of implementation of stage 3, the government of Ukraine focuses on the clearance of agricultural lands. And to achieve these tasks, the special plan will be implemented on the deoccupied territories. This plan has been approved by the National Mine Action Authority, and also this plan has been developed under the mining plan for 2023. So right now, this plan is being successfully implemented, and in total, 470,000 hectares of agricultural lands are going to be surveyed. Right now, over 1,000 specialists are working on this. There are 19 demining machines employed by the armed forces of Ukraine and demining operators, and the scope of pollution is especially high in Kharkiv, Kherson, and Mykolaiv regions, so the occupiers did not spare their explosive ordnance, and so the Ministry of Defense has decided to establish special demining groups in the regional military administrations. And currently in these regions, we are introducing the new methods of territory clearance. These are combined methods with the use of drones, the special demining machines, and of course sappers with the traditional tools. In total, as of today, thanks to seamless work of the armed forces and the State Emergency Service of Ukraine and the mining operators, we were able to successfully survey 73,000 hectares with rapid demining operations as well. For the activities of stage 4 to 6, international and national NGOs are engaged, the ones who had been certified as demining operators, and in total there are 160 groups of this kind working together with over 1,000 demining specialists. They are being financed by donors, and they are currently implemented humanitarian demining operations in Kiev, Chernihiv, Sumy, Mykolaiv, Kherson, and Kharkiv regions. Since the onset of the armed aggression against Ukraine, 1,005 areas were discovered polluted, with the total area of 1,300 hectares, and 9 areas have already been transferred after clearance to the local authorities. In order to prevent mine-associated threats, Ukraine now has the system of mine action, and there was a clear system, clear chain of command, and all of this is based on the law of Ukraine on mine action, according to which the coordination of such activities, including the demining of the liberated territories, the Mine Action Authority was established, which is reporting to the Minister of Defense of Ukraine. So the Mine Action Authority includes representatives of all the government institutions having to do with demining, and it is the Secretariat of the National Authority that is managing all of its activities. So for the practical planning and implementation of demining activities, a center for mine action has been established. This center has been created by the Ministry of Defense under the Special Service of Transport, and also the State Service of Emergencies is taking part in this, and the current mine action system is already quite effective. But we also understand that the sky is the limit. We keep growing, we keep improving, and the certification for mine action operators enables planning of mine action and engagement of international and Ukrainian non-governmental organizations. The problem of territory pollution that is being faced by Ukraine right now is comparable to what Europe was going through after World War II. So the needs are very high here. And since the scope of this demining is huge, the government of Ukraine decided to increase the numbers of demining specialists in the armed forces of Ukraine and the special service of transport. So in total, there will be about 5,000 people there. And also the innovative tools are being employed, such as the tools with artificial intelligence, also the the remote identification tools. And with this in mind, the Ministry of Economy has launched a project for testing of new equipment for demining, both international and Ukrainian products. We were testing the drones intended for the territory surveying, and right now these tests are confirming the efficiency of these new technologies, and the profession of sapers is going to be much safer. Using this opportunity, let me express sincere gratitude for the support of Ukraine in these difficult times when we are fighting for our freedom. We are fighting against the enemy on the front lines while liberating the territories, and I strongly believe that we are going to win, and we will make our country safe. Thank you, and glory to you.
Thank you very much, Colonel, and thank you for the patience with the technical details there. I'll pass the floor now to Mary from the United Nations Development Program, who is the coordinator of the Mine Action Area of Responsibility.
Thank you, Nick. Good morning, everybody. Dobry ranok. Thank you, DRC, and thank you, Roxana, for organizing such an important workshop that I'm sure will offer a fruitful platform to address the challenges and also propose a way forward for the risk education in Ukraine. Thank you, Colonel Berehulia, for your presentation on behalf of the National Mine Action Authority. That was a very interesting overview of the work of the sector. Risk education is as its own working group under the Mine Action Area of Responsibility that is chaired by UNICEF, and thank you UNICEF for taking such a role. Risk education is a life-saving activity. While clearance work may take some time, it is vital for the population to be aware of the threat posed by explosive ordnance and also be informed of the suspected contaminated areas in their neighborhoods and towns. Especially in Ukraine, as the conflict is still ongoing, and the population may return to newly liberated areas, it is very important to reflect on best practices and how to deliver risk education in a timely and the most impactful manner. So I will not take too much of your time, as I will deliver a presentation later on behalf of the Mine Action EORE. And I'm looking forward to attend the different sessions and learn from the different partners involved in risk education. Thank you.
Thank you to you as well. You are free to sit here as we go forward. We will now relook at the agenda just for us to be aware what is in front of us, both today and tomorrow. We will start today with setting the scene, and Colonel has done an excellent job on doing that already. We will look at the challenges that we have faced here in Ukraine over the last 18 years. We'll look at the response of the risk education community, and we'll look also at the target groups. Over the next 2 days, we will then open 5 discussion points. The first one will be today, and then we will continue with 4 more tomorrow. We will talk about monitoring and coordination in risk education today, and then tomorrow we'll talk about emergency risk education materials, risk education for people on the move and those in hard-to-reach areas. Digital risk education will come up as well, and then integration of risk education into the broader humanitarian response. So you can see that it's quite a packed agenda, and I'm thanking all of the presenters who will go on stage in the next 2 days. At every section, I'll invite the presenters up here, and then if you have not sent the presentation to us yet, then feel free to just give them to the technical staff there on the left side. I will be the timekeeper, and so I will sometimes show you a sign that will say 5 minutes, just so that you are aware of the allocated time. Because we have quite a lot of presentations. We've done a survey as well that we want to review, and then we want to have a time for discussion, both from you here in person and those online, and really extract lessons learned for us. With that, I will open the next floor, the next agenda topic, which is the overview of explosive ordnance contamination in Ukraine. And I'll invite kindly Alexander from the National Mine Action Authority to speak first. You can sit here or there, whatever is easiest for you. And then Olga from the OHCHR will speak online. Excellent, go for it. The floor is yours.
Miało być wczoraj, ale osoba z finansów jedna wczoraj. Teraz tak, zobacz, to jest to, że ja powinienem wysłać czegoś do wyboru, tak? No, takich startów.
Запустить презентацію можна попросити? На екрані. Розшарити екран мій.
Aczkolwiek to funkcjonuje dopiero od miesiąca przed tobą.
Дякую вам.
Tak naprawdę, no to...
Значить, моя частина традиційно присвячена базі даних секретаріату Національного органу з питань протимінної діяльності щодо нещасних випадків від детонації мін та вибухонебезпечних залишків війни. Значить, як полковник Руслан Олександрович Берегуля вже повідомив, що у нас дійсно кожного дня відбуваються інциденти, 4-5 інцидентів на день, на жаль, і статистика дуже динамічно збільшується. Навіть є, на жаль, така тенденція, що, можливо, сьогодні буде внесення нових інцидентів до бази даних і постраждалих від них. Там пробуксовка з наступним слайдом. Я вже включив, а він не висвітлюється.
Ale to właśnie indywidualnie z menadżerem, nie? Czyli, a tutaj przykładowo jak mam wolny, to co, komentarz tylko anualny wystarcza? Tak, no. To dzisiaj
Значить, за статистикою, яка наповнюється у базу даних секретаріату національного органу з питань протимінної діяльності щодо нещасних випадків відмін та вибухонебезпечних залишків війни і постраждалих від них осіб, ми за період з 24 лютого 2022 року і по 30 серпня 2023 рік, тобто по вчорашню дату, маємо верифіковані 479 нещасних випадків від мін та вибухонебезпечних залишків війни, внаслідок яких постраждало 738 осіб, серед них 242 загиблих і 496 поранених. Відповідні дані надаються нам на виконання пунктів 2 та 7 затверджених розпорядженням
To be able to implement the Cabinet of Ministers resolution, the operational activity plan on EOD, and these are the primary data with identification of explosives and the people injured. So based on that, the identification of impacted civilians is happening. And as a rule, this is done by the departments of collaboration with the law enforcement, and then the data is included into the database, which, according to the Ukrainian legislation, is managing the database. So also we need to add that the database is an inseparable part of the IMSMA-core demining information systems, and all the mine action operators have access to it in Ukraine. The statistics of the dead people are unfortunately growing, and the highest percentage of them are adult men, and after them we can see the high number of adult women, and also then adult the boys under 18 years of age, and also one girl under 18 years of age. So we can see that in the numbers of injured, the percentage is similar, and the numbers are unfortunately higher. So we again have a much higher number of adult males. It is 399, and also adult women, quite a big number. Unfortunately, the number of children, of boys under 18 years of age is even higher, and also quite a big number of girls under 18 years of age. So for the emergency EOD, the use of our dashboard based on the data from the Secretariat enables to geoposition the points of the incident, and based on that, the EORE teams can make their planning about the communities which should be priorities for emergency EORE. So this point on the map, for instance, has been identified based on the report by the Department of Health in Chernihiv Military Administration after the incident which happened recently. You could probably hear of that in the news. The driver was their family was coming back from a local lake and neglected the signs about the mine danger, and because of that he and his wife died, and their two daughters were injured. So this point has been identified as a place where additional EORE activities have to be implemented, and so this is in the north of Chernihiv region, or we could also do such work in the other impacted districts of Chernihiv region. So one more advantage of the use of database of the Secretariat of the National Mine Action Authority is the availability of a panel with a brief description with the details of each incident. So I'll try to show you where this panel is in the online tool, and hopefully all the operators who have access here, they already have some idea about the functionality of the dashboard. So the description is here on the right, and you can then expand the description part and see the detailed description of each of the incidents which has happened since February 2022, or you can select some specific region concerning which you need statistics for your activities and or for the reports for your donors. So let us pick some period and see the results. In the context of emergency, the teams can understand what is the behavior of some specific population groups or people impacted by the incidents, so that the targeted EORE campaigns can prevent such incidents in the future. And here in the next slides, we can see the importance based on the data provided by the Secretariat of the National and the Mining Authority. Again, we can see the data group by months, and based on that we can understand which periods are the most dangerous for the vulnerable groups. So since a big share of incidents is happening in agriculture and they mostly impact farmers, so the statistics are always much higher in the months where the farmers are doing the agricultural operations such as sowing in spring, and we could see very high numbers in March 2023. That's where the started agricultural works without waiting till the completion of demining, risking their own lives, and unfortunately sometimes losing their lives. So we can see that, unfortunately, the numbers are growing in August. And we could see this this year in August and also in September and October as well. When sowing the winter crops. So this is the right time to focus the efforts on these vulnerable groups to prevent further injuries and deaths. And the data that can be found in the database, it enables the categorization of the population, which are the most vulnerable to incidents based on the filters available in the database and in the information panel. So, for instance, in this slide, you can see some of the statistical data prepared by us for one of the interagency meetings. So these are the professions which are most heavily impacted by the mine incidents, and we did this based on the data based on early August 2023. You can see that the largest category of such people are unemployed. Next, after them, we have agricultural workers. Next, we have the drivers, because they are quite often, or the reasons of their profession, they are prone to some risky behaviors, to ignore the mine risk signs in order to save time of driving. So they are also impacted. Next category is critical infrastructure. So people are going to places to repair the electricity or water supply systems, or to restore roads. And these are also the people prone to incidents, and especially if they work on the territories that have not been surveyed yet. And category 5 is students, especially younger students, especially in summer. They are spending their time in the territories that are quite often unsafe. They are picking different objects, some of which can be unsafe as well. And as I have mentioned before, the categorization based on the national body enables the EORE teams to understand which professions are the most dangerous, and then focus on the development of targeted strategies for such at-risk categories. Next. Here you can see, again, one of the very important aspects of any EORE project is categorization of the persons impacted based on their behavior at the time of the incident. And the behavior change is in the core of your programs. The intention is to change the person's behavior, because if the person understands how to behave safer, it enables to save them from the possible incidents in the future. So based on the information available in the database of the National Mine Action Authority, we are able to see the detailed statistics on the behavior of people. You'll be able to see what group or which modality of behavior is the most widespread. And here I am also sharing some examples of the materials prepared by us for one of the interagency meetings, and these made us aware of the 5 modalities of dangerous behavior that quite often leads to the incidents. So the first behavior modality is ignoring the danger signs. The signs installed based on the preliminary efforts, and we can see that in total over 130 people were damaged, despite the availability of such danger signs. And we can see that in this case, many strategies used by the mine action operators or EORE operators in terms of a digital campaign, for instance, they are not sufficient for certain impacted regions, and we know from the statistics that offline contacts with people are necessary to properly explain people what can happen if they ignore the mine danger signs. We need to explain why these signs are installed, why they are there, and what can happen if a person disregards them, and what are the possible consequences for their life and health. The next highest number is directly touching or playing with the EORE, and this is how the population groups again break the main principle, which is do not touch, and the consequences are terrible. And again, we need to explain people what may happen if they touch the dangerous explosives. So this includes the behavior of children. This includes the behavior of some types of unemployed, which take such objects on purpose because they intend to sell them as a scrap metal, and this is their way of getting income. The next type of dangerous behavior is doing agricultural works, and this brings us back to the previous slide. So these are the people who have not waited for the teams of sappers to have checked the territories, and they were using these territories despite the risk. So, of course, we need to understand whether a person was doing this at their own risk by their own decision, and sometimes it's also done following the orders given by the management of the farm, and in this case, of course, there is criminal responsibility for people taking such managerial decisions, and if a person has been damaged by doing such works following their orders. So one more type of people are people doing some gardening at their own gardens, and this is because they are coming back to their homes, neglecting the recommendations sent prior to the proper selling of the territory. They start doing these works and get exploded. The next dangerous behavior is demining itself. And here again, we need to differentiate between the teams that are competent and empowered by the teams who are competent and able to do the mining. So we are not providing the data on the military, but this is the data on civilian deminers. And of course, there are also military who are doing the mining in different places. But here you can see the numbers of all the other demining teams, such as the demining teams of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine, and actually it's the State Emergency Service itself that gives us this data. And we can also see that we have one verified incident which has to do with the so-called black sleepers, and this is the unfortunate trend that exists in Ukraine right now. So this was a person who arrived in Ukraine as a volunteer, was doing some volunteer demining, not following the safety rules, and got exploded on the anti-personnel mine. This entailed lots of problems for the Ukrainian government, for the Secretariat of National Mine Action Authority, which was also involved in the evacuation of that person to a safe place abroad, where they continued their treatment associated with traumatic amputation of their limbs. And one more specific feature I would like to mention as an advantage of the database. It is the use of data for providing aid to the victims. So it has to do with victim assistance, but as you are aware, all the 5 elements of mine action are closely interconnected, and even contacts with the victims by emergency is one of the priority tasks as well. So we are given the EORE operators to have contacts with people and to have a better understanding of the modalities of unsafe behavior of certain types of populations, and thus adjust their strategies to be able to persuade people to behave safely. So, based on the data received by victim assistance organizations from the database of the National Mine Action Authority, 22 people were able to get aid. The total amount of aid was 423,000 hryvnias. This number will keep growing, and so far as I'm aware, there are lots of victim assistance programs implemented by competent international organizations. Also, I would like to mention as one of the advantages the use of the database for doing emergency EORE sessions in the communities with the highest numbers of people impacted by incidents, and also doing EORE sessions for the groups that are at the highest risk according to our statistics. So this includes the farmers, this includes the unemployed, this includes unspecialized workers. So our panel is available for any certified mine action operator, and in case you are having any technical challenges with access, please contact us via the email that you can see in the bottom. Thank you for your attention.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Alexander. The next presentation will be by Olga, coming from the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. She will speak online, and so you can just raise your hand for our, perfect, we've located you. I believe the screen is yours, the floor is as well, so take it away.
Yes, good morning. I will just share my screen, and I hope you can see it. Yes.
We do indeed.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And good morning once again. My name is Olga. Thank you very much for inviting me to present today during this meeting on behalf of the UN. I will give a brief overview of our activities on civilian casualties documentation in Ukraine, and focusing on civilian casualties resulting from unexploded ordnance of war. I will just quickly tell about our activities in the country. So we are the monitoring mission in Ukraine, and we were deployed in March 2014 at the invitation of the government of Ukraine, and to monitor and publicly report on the human rights situation in the country, with particular focus on the conflict area in eastern Ukraine and the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol, occupied by the Russian Federation. However, since 24th February 2022, the work of the mission has been focusing mainly on documentation of violations of international humanitarian law and human rights law committed by all parties of the conflict. And I want also to highlight that we have a specific mandate all over the world, but specifically also in Ukraine, to document civilian casualties that are resulted from different types of weapons, and specifically from unexploded ordnance. And I want also to flag that I will provide the statistics on civilian casualties and the data that we have recorded. However, each and every time we highlight that the actual figures are considerably higher. First of all, we have our specific methodology to document civilian casualties. So documentation and verification of some cases takes time. And second of all, we do not have access to the occupied territories by the Russian Federation. So there we have specific issues with documentation. The methodology that I just now mentioned is reasonable grounds to believe that a specific casualty happened or occurred in specific location, a specific date, with a specific person. So we should know all this data to tell that this civilian casualty indeed happened. For this reason, we verify number of sources. First of all, it's interviews with victims and witnesses and relatives of the victims. For this, we have our field offices that are open throughout the countries, and our field colleagues are interviewing victims each and every day. Then we also verify open sources, official information, medical records, different reports from international organizations and governmental sources, but also we verify different type of video and photo footage, including settlement. When we have all the data that is needed, it is cross-checked, and we can say that this particular incident is verified. What we do with this information, we publish reports 4 times per year. They are available, and specifically on civilian casualties. We publish bi-weekly updates. So there you can see in our bi-weekly updates, you can see disaggregation by the type of weapon, but also by different categories, including gender, age, and other categories.
Sorry, Olga, to interrupt you. We do have a technical issue with the screen here.
Sure.
If I can ask the technical support to share your screen again, please. Thank you very much.
Yes. So should I stop sharing
Carry on.
share again?
No, you're good to go now. Thank you.
I will do just once again. Yes. Can you see? Sorry. Yes. The third. Yeah, I can see the third one. So as I mentioned, we publish bi-weekly updates, and they provide the information also on the victims of unexploded ordnance. I will briefly give you a brief overview of the civilian casualties that we have recorded since 24th February, and as of today, we have recorded 26,717 civilian casualties in more than 1,500 settlements in Ukraine, including more than 9,500 killed and more than 1,700 injured. We have recorded that 81% of all civilian casualties occurred in territory controlled by the government, and 90% of all civilian casualties occurred in the territory occupied by the Russian Federation. You can also see the gender disaggregation in the screen, and this is the example of how we provide it in each and every bi-weekly update on civilian casualties. Then on specifically disaggregation, specific disaggregation by weapon used in the battlefield, you can see that the majority of civilian casualties, more than 90%, were caused by explosive weapons with wide area effects. What we include in these statistics is shelling and multiple launch rocket systems, and also cruise and ballistic missiles, airstrikes, loitering munitions attacks, and UAVs attacks, so drones attacks. It means that more than 90% of civilian casualties are happening due to this specific weapon, and mainly in populated areas, unfortunately. We have also recorded that 4% of all civilian casualties occurred due to mine and EORE incidents. In 2023, these statistics a little bit changed. So for 2023, 94% of civilian casualties were caused by explosive weapons with wide area effects, and 6% by mines and EORWs. And coming to the specific issues of mines, I can provide the following data. Since 24th February 2022, HRMU has recorded 963 civilian casualties caused by mines and EORWs. with 307 killed, including 22 children, and 656 injured, including 78 children. Once again, the data is corroborated. We're still corroborating some cases back to March 2022, and we're providing the statistics for both sides of the conflict, meaning that we're also corroborating data in the territory which is occupied by the Russian Federation. As Alexander already mentioned, the majority of victims are men and boys. We have the same data. 87% of all victims since 24th February 2022 resulted from mines and ERWs are men and boys. 77% of all casualties occurred in the territory controlled by the government and 23 in territory occupied by the Russian Federation. In 2023, HRMU has recorded that 371 civilian casualties were caused by mines and ERW, which means that in first 8 months of 2023, we have documented 1/3 of all civilian casualties resulted from this particular type of weapon. We also provide usually monthly disaggregation of civilian casualties, and here you can see that there were main increase in number of civilian resulted from mines and ERWs happened in August, September, and October 2022. So this is the time when Ukraine regained control over the territories. So autumn, and as we know, civilians were coming back to their houses, and the majority of mine-related incidents indeed occurred to that timing. And then again, in spring 2023, as already mentioned by Alexander, when people started to work on their land, and there was indeed a peak of civilian casualties again. And you can see the data disaggregated by month on this slide. The fact, so these autumn casualties are also proved by disaggregation by the region, and we can see that the majority of civilian casualties, they occurred in Kharkiv, Kherson regions, and this is again due to the fact that Ukraine regained control of the territories which were occupied by the Russian Federation, and also in the Donetsk region. And here we provide, we have the majority of casualties resulted from PFM mines. And we have also documented that other regions were also impacted by mine-related incidents, including Kyiv region, mainly in March, April, and May 2022, and then Chernihiv, Sumy, Mykolaiv, Luhansk, Odessa, Zaporizhzhia, Dnipropetrovsk, Zhytomyr, and one incident in Ivano-Frankivsk region. So unfortunately, all over the country. HRMU has recorded that the most casualties from mine-related incidents occurred during the spring this year, while civilians were working their land on tractor, working or driving in forest or other rural areas, repairing roads or demining a contaminated site. And then we have also recorded that civilians were handling ERWs without proper safety measures, in particular when they brought home, stored, or tried to dismantle explosive ordnance they had found. And unfortunately, these incidents also resulted in casualties among children, including one child killed. That's it in brief from my side. I wanted to highlight that you can look at our updates on our official website, org, and there you can choose particular profile of Ukraine. We publish there all our updates and all our findings, including on mines. I can also include you in our distribution list, and to this distribution list, I share our bi-weekly civilian casualties updates, and we also published 1 year civilian casualty update and one particular update dedicated to 500 days of war, where we provided very specific statistics on mines and ERW incidents. And finally, if you have any questions to our work, about our work, or do you want to receive some particular data on mines or any other data related to our activities, please do not hesitate to send me a message. I will share my email in the chat, and then if you need any data or any specific disaggregation, we will be happy to provide it. Thank you very much.
And thank you from our side as well. Indeed, from both Sasha's presentation and yours, it's been very helpful for the community here to understand the threats that are out there and for us to have more evidence-based programming. We do have some time before the official break, so if there's any questions, both from people in here or anybody online, raise your hands and then we will give you a microphone. Questions, of course, for the presentation you've just heard. Anyone in the room? Anyone online, perhaps? Nothing currently. Very well. Then we will break for was that somebody asking? It's not a question. Okay, very well. Then we will break for a coffee break a little earlier right now, and then this will give us more time for the discussion at the end. I think everything is pretty much prepared for that. And we will see each other then and continue with the program. 20 minutes past 11 in Ukraine time. Thank you very much. Here all, we're gonna slowly begin. I would kindly ask for Alexander from the State Emergency Services to join us here on stage with me and Mary, as well as Volodymyr from the Ministry of Temporary Occupied Territories of Ukraine. Thank you. Calling one more time for Alexander from the State Emergency Services and Volodymyr from the Ministry of Reintegration to join us on stage. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much. After the coffee break, before the coffee break, we've seen the extent of the issue that we have here in Ukraine with EO contamination. And so now this section will also show what the community at large did in terms of informing people on the dangers of explosive ordnance and the safe behavior around it. We've therefore invited Mary here to speak on behalf of all mine action operators in Ukraine, and then the State Emergency Services, the largest provider of risk education in Ukraine, as well as the Ministry of Reintegration, who for a very long time was also conducting risk education sessions and other activities. So we thought it fair for them to also have a space here. So I'll pass the floor to Mary and her presentation, please.
Thank you, Nick. Can you give me? No. Okay, thank you very much. So I will present you the work of the Mine Action Area Responsibilities members, those who are reporting into the humanitarian 5W platform. Just for a brief overview and show you where the risk education working group sits with regard to national authority, but also the mine action area of responsibility. So as you can see from the right, you have the United Nations humanitarian architecture, and the mine action area of responsibility is a subcluster of the protection cluster, in which there are at the moment two working groups, the risk education that is chaired by UNICEF, and the victim assistance working group that is chaired by DRC and HI. And those working groups are also the link between the National Mine Action Authority, but also the Mine Action EORE. So I was asked to present the achievement of the partners in terms of risk education since the beginning of the war in February 2022. So under the Mine Action EORE and the 5W platform, 9 partners are reporting. So one UN agency, UNICEF, we have 7 international NGOs and 1 national NGOs. Those NGOs with their activities have reached over 763,000 people, almost 300,000 children, and over 471,000 adults. And when we talk about risk education, the indicators they are reporting against are conducting risk education in schools, but also in communities, and also a distribution of leaflets and other material, and finally media campaigns, TV, radio, on social media. I would say that one of the issues that we've been facing when I joined the Mine Action EORE is the coordination of the risk education activities. Often NGOs and humanitarian partners were telling me that when they go conduct risk education, often they end up in a location where other partners are already working, and the local administration may complain about there is not enough coverage in their oblast. So the idea was to develop a tool to support the humanitarian partner to avoid duplication, but also help covering the gaps in terms of risk education activities. So in June this year, we've launched a risk education planning tool. First in Kharkiv, so it's the map on the left side, and second in Mykolaiv, the map on the right side. And Mykolaiv was launched in August this year. So it's a very simple survey where humanitarian partners inform at the Hromada level where they plan to conduct risk education activities for the following months. And the Mine Action EORE collects the inputs from all the humanitarian partners, and if we see that there are duplications within the Hromada, then we come back to the partners and support or ask them if they can reconsider the Hromada where they think to work in order to avoid those duplication. So the map you see is the planning activities for September, and we've been collecting the information over the past week, and as you can see from the map in Kharkiv, there are quite some duplication that needs to be addressed and are currently being addressed. But I think instead of seeing that, okay, there is an issue, there is duplication, at least there is a tool to see that there are duplications, and there is a possibility to address those duplications before implementing the activity. And also, I didn't put a map from the previous month in Kharkiv, but as you can see in Kharkiv, at the moment, there is quite a good coverage of the oblast. So that's also an improvement from the multiplication of partners working on the ground, and also better coordinations by avoiding duplications. And we started replicate the same project in Mykolaiv. So Mykolaiv for September is the second month. We have less partners yet working in Mykolaiv, but the good thing is that at the moment there was no duplication in Mykolaiv. It's still a work in progress. We're still at the early stage of developing this tool, but hopefully when he has reached its full capacity and its full maturity, this is something that the Mine Action EORE can hand over to the National Mine Action Authority if they think that it's actually useful for them. So we are trying to find solutions and also testing to support the partners conducting risk education activities in the coordination of delivering those activities. So that would lead me to the not the final point, but the main challenge that, as being with the Mine Action EORE, have been identified in terms of conducting risk education. And as I said earlier, we have 8 humanitarian partners that are reporting on the mine action activities. If you look at the list from the National Mine Action Authority, there are 10 operators that are accredited to deliver risk education. But as you may all know, many other partners are conducting awareness sessions, risk education sessions, without being accredited. So I think that the role also of the EORE, but also is to formulate recommendation, and one of the recommendations would be to encourage, but also provide support to those actors who are delivering or seeking to deliver risk education sessions in the process of being registered and accredited. And under the humanitarian, Ukrainian Humanitarian Fund that is managed by OCHA, this is one of the recommendation or one of the guidance that we make when there are funding available, that local partners who seek to conduct risk education needs to be accredited, and if they're not accredited, need to receive a training of trainers from accredited organizations. So we try to help one step at a time, support partners to deliver risk education with the support and in the process of following the same standards as the accredited partners. Then the second challenge, as you may have seen from the previous slide, is the duplication of risk education activities. When we say duplication, is duplication in terms of geographical coverage. And the way to address that is to strengthening the coordination. And the risk education planning tool is one of the tools that we've identified or we've developed to support that. But I think that maybe that should be extended in other areas where risk education have been delivered, and also better information sharing before delivering the activities to avoid that. And then the last point is, as the National Mine Action Authority mentioned in their presentation earlier, 15 million people have been affected by the conflict or by the shellings or by the explosive remnants of war. So I think as a sector, there is a need to reach more people with risk education. And one way of perhaps achieving this, and this is something that I will invite all of you to reflect and provide your comment, is maybe to develop a platform for service request. As the Mine Action EORE coordinator, often other UN agencies or NGOs reach out to me and say, we are working in this oblast or in this Romada, and the people we're providing service to needs to have risk education. How can they get it? So at the moment, what I do, I checked the partners who are already working in the area, reach out to them, can you support? And most, like 99% of the time, there is always at least 1 or 2 partners who are willing to deliver risk education activities. But I think if we found a system that can more systemize that approach, then that will also help deliver risk education activity where it's actually needed. So that's the end of my presentation. If you have any question or comment, happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we will take questions at the end of the presentation. So if anybody has one, pencil it down, and you'll get the space at the end. And with this, I will pass the floor to Alexander over here from the State Emergency Services of Ukraine. And you have your own presentation as well. So Mary, I will take the clicker.
Hello, everyone. I fully agree with the previous speakers. Indeed, our territory, the territory of our country after the full-scale invasion is polluted a lot. And because of that, the State Emergency Service of Ukraine pays lots of attention to EORE, and you can see some statistics from the IMSMA database, and you can see here that we have completed almost 20,000 sessions, covering the total of almost 650,000 people, and we are paying lots of attention to informing of children. And you can see in the slide that there were over 300,000 children who were covered by the EORE activities. Also, we have a big number of remote communities in Ukraine. These are places difficult to get to. And for this purpose, we have created mobile EORE teams, which are based on such cars equipped by tables, chairs, 3D models of dangerous explosive ordnance. That's the most popular in Ukraine, and also some printed materials. And right now, we have 13 EORE classes following this model. It started in Dnipro, Zaporizhzhia, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, and Kyiv. And as of now, 110 visits were made, covering 8,500 people. In the second stage, mobile classes were established also in Odessa, Rivne, Sumy, Kherson, Mykolaiv, and since Monday, the visits will be made there as well. And also there is a plan to establish additional mobile classes for other regions of Ukraine. And if we consider the map carefully, we understand that there are new regions that have to have this coverage. So this will be Lviv, Khmelnytsky, Vinnytsia, and they will be delivering such informant sessions in their own regions, but also be able to travel to the east. And also we are working closely with our youngest citizens. I would like to show you a small video for you to understand how our teams work in Sumy region. And this is just one of our many activities.
Перша першочергово були вибрані ті міста, які або
We selected the cities that were deoccupied and impacted by the armed aggression of the Russian Federation. This is why we are starting from Sumy, and we are starting from working with children. So what is so special about your work with children? Maybe it's different from your work with adults. Yes, it's entirely different because we should speak with children in the suitable language. We can use more examples. We should use models to show the color and the shape of each of the possible explosive objects. So the main purpose is to show children how explosive ordnance is truly dangerous. To explain, it's not some kind of a toy that they can find in the street or in some home or on a tree. We are explaining children what actions they need to take if they see anything suspicious, and we can see that this suspicious items can be disguised as sweets and everything. Yeah. So there are different objects that we are using in this and different tools such as games developed by the State Emergency Service. The main task is to teach children to live safely in this hostile environment we are in. And what's your impression from this communication with children? Well, I always adore children. They are so active. One of the boys wanted to do all the tasks, and it's a pity we have to live in such terrible conditions. And yeah, we have to adjust. So this was one of the many examples of the things we are doing, and I want to ensure you that everywhere in our country, similar events are happening, that they are delivered by our staff. Sometimes we are doing this together with charity organizations, and we will not stop there. And as of now, the statistics are quite positive, and we need to educate the population. The more we do this, the fewer incidents we have. And now I would like to give the floor to Andrei from the Humanitarian Demining Center. They were the first to establish a mobile class that worked in Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, and Kherson region. Yeah, let's give them the floor. Hello everyone. I am the head of EORE department in the Demining Center in Kharkiv region. And before discussing the mobile class, I would like to share some of the statistics. Indeed, the numbers are growing. In 2022, there were 10,000 EORE activities covering 260,000 people. This year, we had 8,000 such activities covering about 400,000 people. So the numbers are indeed going up, and by the end of the year, we will see even more population being covered with such EORE activities. So Alexander has mentioned in his presentation the mobile classes that are established, and the first pilot was implemented in our center, and we were the first to get such a car from a charitable organization. It was a beautiful and convenient vehicle that we equipped with all the necessary equipment, and we made some pilot visits in Kharkiv, Donetsk, Dnipro, Zaporizhia, and Mykolaiv regions. We were working about 20 kilometers away from the contact line. The situation is quite often challenging, and yeah, uh, in most cases it was forbidden to teach large groups of people all at once, but we still did our best to cover as many people as possible with our EORE activities. So we delivered 29 sessions in 3 weeks, and depending on the situation, and we were delivering up to 3 sessions per day, sometimes. So most of the time we were working for adults because many people have left those territories, but also there were school children, and we had special arrangements so that we could learn about the schools, about the remote places, which had challenges in terms of accessibility. And we expected to see some places which have not been covered before with information about EOD, but most of the time when our colleagues have arrived there, they learned about DRC or Halo Trust, delivering some similar training, albeit not the same, in the same place. But the purpose is the same as ours, to inform the local population about the pollution levels and the possible consequences of the dangerous ordnance that is still remaining there. So a couple of photos here to show you the work of our mobile class. Yeah, we can see it. So you can see this car, and in total we have 13 of those in Ukraine, and some of them are working in the regions we worked in before. So we were getting lots of phone calls and information requests. They wanted to make these cars recognizable, looking more or less the same as ours, for people to know that this is the team coming to inform about the mine dangers. So certainly we have challenges seeing your photos. Could you please click on your photo? So yeah. How do I do that? So we can only see the folder with the photos, but we do not see the photo itself. And now, can you see photo? Not yet. So we want to see your slide once again. And now, can you see anything? No, not yet. Not yet. So yeah, I wished I could show you some equipment that we are using and how we are conducting our activities. And we are doing this work in different territories, but most of the time we can see any children. They are already knowledgeable about things. They can name the exact types of ammunition used. Some of the things they learned on TV, some of the things they learned from their parents. Some information makes it to people through the leaflets that are distributed. So most of the time, the population we're speaking with, they have lots of experience, and we are also there to listen to them because they are desperate to speak to someone, and yeah, we need also to provide a reassurance and understanding that the work is underway to cleanse the territory of the mine pollution, and quite soon there will be a chance to go have a rest somewhere in the forest or somewhere else in the natural surroundings. We are working together with our international partners to have our land free from those dangerous objects. Thank you so much. And yeah, we are moving together to Ukraine's victory.
This is done not only on risk education, but other aspects of mine action. I'll pass the floor now to Volodymyr from the Ministry of Temporary Occupied Territories. The floor is yours.
Доброго дня, шановні присутні, шановні колеги. Спочатку хотів би наголосити на тому, можливо, хтось перший раз знайомиться, чим саме займається Мінреінтеграції у сфері протимінної діяльності. Насамперед, і основна завдача – це здійснення заходів з інформуванням населення.
EORE, we are conducting activities to inform the population about explosive objects. We are working closely with the State Service of Emergency, and as you can see before, it is quite active, so their materials are being distributed in the communities. And the most important element here is providing budgets and programs and funds. So the main use of the funds is making those signs about mine danger, and you have seen them in the previous presentations as well. According to the regulations, these signs should be quite numerous. You should see one at a distance no more than 15 meters. So we had recently had a meeting concerning the deoccupied territories, and we could hear the numbers today about the huge scopes of land that is mined, and we could see that the need in those information signs is quite big. So right now, according to our data, the need is to have 460,000 of such signs, and we can cover only about 20% of that need. And using this opportunity, we would kindly ask the international partners to join this work. Together, we will be making those signs and transferring them to places where they are needed most, because we could see from the statistics of the Ministry of Defense that in remote places, the awareness lags behind. So there needs to be a set of measures, the information sites, the mobile classes, etc. And over a year, we are already taken joint efforts with mobile phone operators. I believe everyone who lives here in Ukraine, you get informed once a month or so. So their messages have covered about 10 million people already. And also in the deoccupied territories, we installed satellites, and we have also delivered online training for schools. So this is something that we are planning to continue to do. There were some videos that were screened in the theaters and in the public transport. So again, I would kindly request the international partners to join in this effort of the production and dissemination of such video materials, because we can see that the effect is very good, and the coverage of children serves well to increase awareness both in the children and in their parents. Especially this is important in the territories that were impacted.
Thank you as well. We will now open the floor for any questions for the presenters. Perhaps anybody here in person or anybody online. Any questions? We have a question. Thank you very much. We will get you a microphone. 1 second.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to all the presenters for the excellent presentations and information provided. It was really good to see a lot of coverage by the operators and also by the state emergency service across different oblasts, and all these activities that the EORE is doing to avoid duplication. I would just have a question perhaps for Marie, now that our CESU colleague has left, if there are any plans to also have these coordination efforts and avoidance of duplication to involve CESU and any other actors engaged in risk education.
I think originally the idea was to coordinate with, to respond to a need from the humanitarian partners. But if this is, if other actors want to support the coordination effort and join that coordination, of course, more than happy to be more inclusive in the coordination process. I think we're taking one step at a time. It's already coordinating 5 or 6, 7 partners. It's already something, but yeah, hopefully we can expand that coordination efforts. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the question. Any other questions, perhaps? Just raise your hand. Anybody online, perhaps? Nobody. Okay, that's fine. We will then, a bit earlier, move on to the next section. And the next section will look at the knowledges, attitudes, behaviors, and practices of at-risk groups. And thank you very much to all of the presenters again. And at this point, I will invite Svetlana and Tanya from UNICEF to come here and have the dedicated presentation.
No jokes about our topics. Okay, can we make it a bit smaller because it's hard to see? But okay, is it all good with the presentation? Okay, so let us maybe introduce ourselves. My name is Svetlana Kisilova, and I'm a social behavior change specialist at UNICEF Ukraine.
Hello, I'm Tatiana Kazanzhy from UNICEF. I'm social behavior change consultant.
So today we want to share with you some insights from our research. We were focusing on children and their caregivers in terms of their knowledge and awareness levels about the explosive objects. And if we will have a presentation soon here, so you will see a few good slides. A lot of information on them.
Yeah, and this will be probably useful for practitioners who are programming EORE for you to understand where to draw your attention to what specific content pieces and what exactly is in the mind of our population in Ukraine right now. And just for probably clear understanding, to provide you with a small remark that the research was conducted in December/early February, so the data is not really new, up to date, but I guess those insights are still relevant.
Yeah. Okay. So this research has two components, right? We had one sample that is all Ukraine and that represents urban population of Ukraine by region, and sample 2, it's more focused regions and settlements in the near front zone. It's important to note that because then we will refer to this. So always sample 1, the whole Ukraine, we will remind you, and sample 2, the near front zones regions. So what we did is the sample 1, the whole Ukraine urban population, we interviewed children 7 to 17 years old and their caregivers, and the sample 2, we will provide you a bit more details. Who is participating in EORE working group has access to this presentation, but I believe we will send it out to all participants of this workshop. And our sample 2 is near frontline settlements. It's more local population and IDPs who were living there for 3+ months. And also we focused on children up to 17 years old and their caregivers. And those regions included Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, Sumy, Chernihiv, Kherson, and Donetsk regions. It's important to note that we, of course, pass the ethical committee, and we, of course, got a permission from parents to interview their children. So all interviews were conducted according to international standards. And we, of course, did some pre-tests of our questionnaires to understand if children can understand what we are asking them, because it's very important as they can just answer what they think we want to hear. About a bit more about children that we have interviewed. You can see here that we had elder children and smaller children. It's almost half-half, so 42% and 58%. Also, gender balance is according to our sample, and we had children that present all the regions equally, a bit more in center and west. However, it's according to the statistics that we had available about children living in various regions. Same with sample 2. And again, reminding you about our focus oblasts that we were conducting research among certain oblasts, asking them about their awareness level and knowledge about explosive objects. And a bit more details about caregivers. We interviewed caregivers from 23 to 59 years old. And 24% of those people who we interviewed were changing their place of living, if we are talking about the general sample. So I think we will go to our main findings and insights that we have from this research, and we will split it into two halves. First about children and their children, and then about caregivers, and some details that might be useful for your for planning your programs. So generally, children say that they maybe, okay, Tatiana, let's do as we agreed. You do a bit more about children. I will do a bit more about caregivers.
Let's contribute, I guess. We'll contribute to each other. Okay. So also just a small remark that it was not easy to conduct this research because at that moment the research was conducted online. It was the requirement from the research company, from Kantar. Kantar International Company was conducting this in Ukraine. They were the one who suggested us the best samples and delivery dates, which was also important. But it was the mid of power outages in Kiev and all over Ukraine. And when it's online, it was really tough. And right now we understood, and during the last EORE working group, we discussed that there is a possibility to do it offline, face-to-face, etc. At that moment, that was not possible. So we came up, okay, online is better than nothing. So for your understanding, but the sample was very carefully picked and all the profiles has been cleared. So we can rely on the data. In terms of sample, here you can see the slide that is dedicated to the main insights in terms of children from the two samples we had, the all Ukraine with the population, urban population, 50,000 minus, as sociologists say, which means towns and cities, but not that big. And also the population from the neglected, marginalized communities and pre-frontline, near frontline regions and bordering regions, which are very important. So in terms of EORE awareness level, children consider themselves being aware of explosive ordnance, especially what to do and how to report if they see EO or near them. But then you will see more insights about that. Then children from the southern region often show insecurity in certain issues of mine safety, in such topics as the ability to recognize the explosive ordnance, what happened if you are near, what you have to do, how to act. And this we will justify you a bit later why it's like this, but to make the story shorter, for the southern region of Ukraine, this is something very new. And people who stayed there, who didn't move, it is a new topic, and they still dealing with this. IDP children from small inhabited localities are more likely to know what explosive ordnance, the way they look like, and where they might be located and hidden, but they are less aware of how to act. And usually probably people and children, they expect that you have to do something extraordinary, outstanding. And when we then afterwards named them what they had to do, there's like, oh, I knew that. But I didn't saw on that very moment when I see the object that I have to act this way. So this is something about the triggers and moving from the awareness level to the behavior change. Also, lower EORE, explosive ordnance awareness level, is demonstrated by the children in Zaporizhia region. The way it look, phone number to call, and about the phone numbers, there will be more insights. Okay, I moved too far, right? Yeah. So about adults, here is a little brief.
Technical question. Can we make a light a bit smaller because it's impossible to look at people? Okay. Okay. I can't see you people, so I'm very sorry. Okay, so about adults, they report that they know emergency numbers. They understand that there are various zones and the danger is different in various oblasts. It can be also a very good thing. We will show you a bit more details, but it's important to know that people and who were displaced, they think, okay, it's safe here. They think that cities are safer than small settlements. And also they think that, and they understand the series of consequences. However, they not always, we checked a small interesting thing. We ask, what do you think your friends know? And they say, oh, I know everything, but I don't think my friends know this. So, and sometimes when you're trying to check if they really understand some issues and topics, and for example, the danger of explosives, you don't want them to ask them directly because adults don't want to feel stupid, right? But when you ask them about their friends, they are like, oh, but they don't know anything. And it really shows that they might not know all the rules, and they say that they know, right? Like the socially expected answers. So they report that they understand. However, we need to double check if they really understand where and how they can find explosives and how to behave. Interesting that they know how to report. They know the number 101. Children, on the contrary, they mix up these numbers, and they don't always report clearly about the numbers they need to call when they see or find explosives. Yeah, and a bit more about insights for your programming on children. Of course, we are always saying that UNICEF is working, and it's our main focus, so we have a bit more insights about children. However, you always interact with them, and you also have sessions, and we work with the State Emergency Service and trying to deliver these focuses. And again, we will stress our attention on that on things that we've seen, and even in the video, what you need to do and what you don't need to do when developing programs, when you're developing materials on EORE, because some things like displaying even 3D samples of some mines might be dangerous outcome for further behaviors.
So some of the insights, the clicker is very nice here, much better than 2 days ago in another one workshop we conducted. Okay, so there will be a lot of numbers for you, and just be patient because some of them are really require your attention too. Like those one marked in green and red, I try to explain you. So one of the insight is that in Zaporizhia Oblast, compared to other regions, children are less aware and know about explosive ordnance. And when we ask them, which of the following do you know about explosive ordnance, you can see here the main highlight. In Zaporizhia, only when you ask them, they were saying, I know about explosive objects and can confidently recognize them. Only 20, if you see the breakdown, you see that only 38 knows well. So the majority, they don't know pretty well. And also, when we ask them the same questions, there was also the type of answer, I know where explosive objects can be hidden. And you see that know something, but not sure, not confident enough is more than half, which says that we have to pay attention to this region with this specific pillar of EORE. And also the interesting number is about, I know what should I do if I see explosive objects. Half only know. The rest have doubts or don't know at all in Zaporizhia. And in terms of Sumy, where already demining is operating, where we do have different type of EORE activities, many of operators have. So you can see that the answer, I know where and who to contact, it's about the referral mechanism. Less than half know this, which is really critical, in our opinion. So sometimes we doubt, and we discuss this quite often on the EORE working group, whether we should still keep all of these 3 rules. Some of the people do remember, some of them know. For the sake of those lives, of these 40% who don't know, or who knows bad, we should keep going with this. And about the marking, we also ask about the locations, how to act, and also about official, non-official marking of the territories and objects. You see them less than half in the Donetsk region, which was accessible for us only at some point, of course, and not all the region as itself, the number is not that significant as we expected, because during the last 8 years altogether we were working there and we were sure that people still can remember, etc. But at some point it turned out that marking is still something not clear for them. In Kherson Oblast, children more often believe that all the listed items can pose the threat. And here you can see the breakdown of the items that we have shown to them with some of the pictures and the names. And please have a look on Kherson in terms of grenades and different type of landmines and mines are like PFM-1, OZM-72, VOG-25. People, children living there, they don't know these objects, that they cannot recognize them, and they don't understand that those objects can pose the threat to them and to human overall. So some of them, when we are tailoring our EORE program, we have to pay attention that in some specific oblasts, this will be specifically shaped, like to highlight and to stress out specific types of explosive ordnance. The vast majority of children have not personally seen explosive ordnance, which is quite good. So many of them have spotted this and seen through their different materials. And the IDP children from small settlements and from the sample 2, which is about the frontline regions and near the border regions, they have better experience, and in particular with regard to anti-personnel and anti-tank mines and booby traps. So which means that we have to articulate them other type of objects as well, of explosive ordnance. Oh, this is my favorite slide, because quite often I put a lot of efforts to convince people to keep going with one phone number, not to pull 2 or 3 or 5. And here is explanation why. When we reach 52% only of knowing of 101 of state emergency service, if it was 92, I would be, okay, let's go for the next numbers. But when it is so low, after 8 years, and right now after 1.5 years, I mean, this is not enough for us to add extra. And I try to persuade other colleagues, like to convince, avoid as much as possible 2 numbers, 3 numbers, etc. Especially with children, they are not capable to remember numbers. And when it comes to specific time to recall and to proceed, they are shaking and they cannot remember any. So as much as possible to keep with 1. And I know there is 112, which is very promoted. It is about the such type of emergency situation. But I would suggest to articulate this number only for the adults so far, and for children to stick only with the 1. And here you see the explanation. And some small also insight from here. The children living in the cities and towns from the main sample, from overall Ukraine, from the not that big cities, but cities, who have whose families changed the place of the residence after the invasion. They know phone number 112 much better than other numbers. But children living in the cities who have seen, who have experienced emergency evacuation or keep living in those settlements, they know better 101. Especially in Kharkiv Oblast, which is quite nice. We understand whether we're doing our job there better with this. But then, well, the phone numbers 112 and 102 are more often somehow memorized by people from Donetsk Oblast.
And if you wonder what is 105, this is something we try to trick children to say, okay, there is non-existing number, so it's okay if you don't know them.
Yeah, this is kind of having and working on questionnaire is very also challenging, because you cannot put all the clear answers. There is something that has to mislead them. So for us to understand, get better results in the end, better verified and validated. So 105, and like the previous question about the friends, like, oh, I know everything. I always no doubt what I know, but my friends, they might not know this. But why? Because you are apply to your friends your experience. So to add in the questionnaire tricky answers is important to mislead. And here's overall situation with the breakdown. So now you can see which regions know better which phone numbers And for 101, my favorite one, you see that South no and East better, but the rest of Ukraine less. I mean, I won't stop here longer because we are very limited in time. Nick, let us know, okay? We do? Okay. So almost third part of children who took part in this research from Zaporizhia Oblast, they don't know where to call or to report on explosive ordnance. And you see here that only 50% says 100 or 101, and there is also police, which time to time some of operators still add to their materials, to the handout materials, and they promote this number. Of course, National Police sometimes they do their job in my nation too. But in terms of referral mechanism, it's something that really mislead people. Among children from the sample 2, from the neglected regions, from the vulnerable regions, the phone number 101 is better known in Kharkiv Oblast, and the phone number, as was said, 112 and 102 are more often mentioned in Donetsk Oblast. And you see here that the best Kharkiv is aware about state emergency service, and Donetsk somehow know better 102 than state emergency service number.
Why we are talking about numbers so much? Because we see often that in many information materials, people want to give all the numbers. They want to list everything and they want to provide as much information as possible. But this is not safe for children. If they don't remember one clear number, they will not report, they might do something that we don't want them to do, and then the next person can also suffer. So for us, it's very clear task is to report to one number. So we avoid any further incidents.
So the next insight is about understanding of their risks. So children understand that being near an explosive ordnance can lead to life consequences, but they more often than adults believe that it can be scratches and minor injuries, which is very crucial. And when we ask them, what do you think could happen if you are standing or appearing next to explosive object, you see that there can be the high level of injury and death. So with the next one slide, you will see better understanding. The IDP children from small settlements, these are not IDP, but at some point we needed to shortcut somehow the sample too. So the children that live in the pre-frontline regions and the most vulnerable, they more often believe that if they appear near an explosive ordnance, they should not move and need to act as adult will say, if there is adult next to them. At the same time, these children are less likely to know that the object should not be touched, and more often they think that they should listen to their friends. So you see that they rely more on friends than the knowledge they can have at this point, and they still don't know the rule about don't touch. And so there is a breakdown you can look through carefully, and there is also a breakdown by the regions. Elder children living in the cities and towns know better the 3 rules. So when we are talking about 2 samples, where we did our job well, and still have to, and still there is a room for improvement. The room for improvement is there where we have vulnerable communities and where we have pre-frontline regions and bordering regions. So those children who are living are part of these 10 oblasts. They better know about do not touch, do not approach, and call special services because they are more digitalized. They attend kindergarten, schools, etc. And they are not that neglected. However, those children are less aware of don't move rule, and this is something that before 2022 we started to distinguish in children behavior, because they were already many years in these circumstances and surrounding, and we started to work with trying to distinguish the behavior in terms of when you are appearing on the landmine and when there is only EORE next to you. But then 2022 happened, and we understood that, okay, we need to come back again for the steps back and to explain from the very scratch, because right now the overall audience is much broader. But maybe now it's also to point for us still think how we can add this to our program, the don't move rule, and when. So to give the understanding what is the landmine and how to distinguish this from the other risk territories, and how they have to proceed further. If I cannot move, can I touch the phone? Can I do the call, etc.? In terms from the children from the sample 2, which is about the pre-frontline regions, they are less likely to say that they will report on spotted object to their adults. For me, this insight means that those children do not rely on their parents much. And this is about vulnerable families, neglected communities, and this marginalized communities too. And this is about the official marking and unofficial. Children are aware overall of danger signs. The official marking signs are the best known, which is very good, but we also understand that those marks are placed there where the territory was already served, where there was already a technical survey and a technical survey provided. But in terms of the other signs, they still don't know much about the ones that are handmade by communities. And the danger signs are also better known by the children who are living in the most highly contaminated by landmines and UXOs regions. They're resident of small inhabited localities. And here we have a slide about children aged from 7 to 12 in the east. They are more often known that the exposure ordnance can be found in trenches, in forests, in military checkpoints. This was about locations. And in water sources. However, in the west of Ukraine, and we were doing the survey also in the west of Ukraine, where the high population of IDPs, and we never know when those IDPs will get back to their communities. For that reason, we still have to work there too. And they don't see the danger in their forest. They don't consider forest as the danger location for them. Of course, as long as they live in the less affected territory of the country, it's like this. But once they move back, this is something that we will have to promote more. So right now I will hand over to Svetlana.
And a bit more about parents and caregivers, why we were focusing on them, is they are setting up an example. We understand that what children see, what their parents are doing, they will do it themselves as well. Of course, we are having dog patron, and children learned now to scream, "Mom, don't touch those objects." Dog patron says that you don't need to do that. So we are very grateful that we have this dog ambassador, and he's helping us. However, we see from many other topics, like from COVID-19 and different outbreaks, that Ukrainians have very low acceptance of risks. They think that this will happen, but not to them. And it's not only about explosives, it's about everything. You will see that during COVID, the first year, maybe the first summer season, people were not going out. They were following the rules. But then they said, okay, whatever. The same is happening now with air alarms and everything. Whatever, I won't follow those rules. Same happening in Odessa region now when they say, okay, I will go to swim. So some beaches are open. Why I can't swim in other beaches? It's safe. I used to go there when I was small. So parents do not, and caregivers, they don't perceive, and adults in general, right? They don't perceive these risks as high because they are getting used to it. And it means that they will stop following our rules, and their children will stop following it as well. When we are talking that we are building a culture of safety, and we are starting from the preschool age, it's good, but as of now, parents still possess threat. They are a source of unsafe behaviors. So what we see, of course, the adults report that they know everything. However, we see some interesting points that we want to share. So caregivers living in bigger cities more often consider the places where they live to be safer. So we understand that bigger cities like Mykolaiv, Kherson, Odessa, Zaporizhia, Dnipro, they think Everything is safe here. They don't think that if missile hits some building that surroundings are unsafe. Or in Kiev, they think, okay, it's safe, so let me pick up this something that will fall down this night. Let's do it. It's safe, right? In Kiev, why it's not safe? So we need to understand that they think it's safer, and this also means that they won't tell their children how to behave, or they won't behave themselves when they go to villages. You know, Ukrainians love dachas, right? Who has been to a dacha from foreigners? Let me show you. Yes, you see, Nick already has been to a dacha. But you are living in a big city, you go to a dacha, you don't think that it's a threat. But you go to a dacha in Chernihiv region, and what? There is a threat. So we need to work on people living in bigger cities saying that, okay, where risks are hiding. Then caregivers living in cities and IDP adults believe to a greater extent that if they need to first check the surrounding when they enter something. However, IDP caregivers would call the SESU more often that and don't touch anything. So they still we see it among IDPs, and it's a good trend. However, we still need to communicate these 3 rules to adult people as well. Yes, it's a bit. Caregivers, like children, of course, they are confident that they are knowing what to do and whom to reach out when they found an explosive object. But what we told you earlier is caregivers from small settlements are less aware of mine safety. So maybe because information is reaching out to people in bigger cities more, they used to this information, and we need to focus on smaller cities. We understand that it's villages and maybe some distant areas, and we need to work more on traditional media as well. But not only, for example, leaflets, as we see. We always try to, because leaflets they throw away, they don't read to some posters. We need to be creative. We need to be creative with small cities and villages, as we, for example, did in our posters or in our leaflets. We also did like a Sudoku or
Labyrinthum, Sudoku, something that will stay in your hands a little bit longer, extend the life of this leaflet.
Yeah.
And we are personally very against the leaflet, and we encourage you to not also proceed with this. It was 10 years ago when it was informal enough for people to read, keep reading this, and keep with them. But as of now, we all have to move to other formats when what you hand out can serve more than several minutes, and that's it. So we have to extend the life of what we are printing out and use the donor funds.
Yeah, and if you want to print a leaflet and you want to distribute it in small villages and cities, please make sure that you include something useful for them, not only about mine safety, but about other things, right? Like the Sudoku, or for summer safety campaign, what we did, we put this data for when you need to seed your plants and everything. So you have this small calendar. We didn't do the horoscope because we are, we believe in data and science and evidence-based things, but this is what people like to read. So include something interesting when you're working with smaller settlements. People, of course, in bigger cities are reached with digital media more often. And of course, any other creative things that you can do, not only outdoor advertising. Adults, they believe that those around them know what to do and whom to contact if they find an explosive object. They consider their friends are a little bit less. So this is what we told
Which
earlier.
means they know a little bit less than they think.
Yeah, so they are very confident that they know, but here we think we will maybe conduct a bit deeper research and some maybe experiments and analyze that data on what they really know and how they really behave. Because as we heard earlier, in Chernihiv, they decided just to cut the road maybe and consequences are really terrible. Caregivers know more about 101. This is good. Compared to children, they know more this number. So at this point, we still need to focus on one number, and they can also communicate it to their children. What we want to include is like teach your child whom to call when they see a threat or when they see an explosive object. I hope they won't. And all caregivers are aware of the serious consequences of being around explosive objects. What is interesting here, and the insight, is that children, they don't understand the sequence, right? Their brain is not developed yet to the point when they see, okay, if I touch it, it will explode, and then a terrible thing will happen. But adults do understand. So we need to work with children, very carefully explaining them the sequence of what is happening and what can happen to you if you will do this or that. So the sequence of the events is very important. For adults, it's a bit more clear what will happen. A few other things that caregivers living in cities and IDPs living in small settlements always equally believe that if it's impossible to replace themselves with some heavy objects, but there are still people like that. So they think that if they step on something, maybe I will put a rock hard enough, and it will be okay.
So that's the myth that comes from the Hollywood movies, are still with us, even after many years, and something that we still have to pay our attention to the myths and how to break them.
Yay, it's a bit slow. It's thinking, yeah. What is interesting, we also have this data on children where they can, both groups understand that the most dangerous places are those whose, like where hostilities or missiles attacks took place. So it's good that they understand that, but we need to communicate more that like forests and places that you used to link to a safe place, used to link to your place of resting, and everything can be dangerous as well. And it's important that children go for summer holidays, they might go to their grandparents that live near contaminated areas, and it's important to communicate these things as well. Yeah, let's maybe skip this because it's a bit more information about various areas. So as a result, we understand that we need to work in terms of caregivers and adults, we need to work on their safe behaviors, and the level of risk will decrease and they will used to it. So we need to keep the bar really high and communicate what can happen and why it's still dangerous, and trying to motivate them to explain the safe behaviors and demonstrate safe behaviors to their children.
And tomorrow, for those of you who will be with us still, we will show you how to build up the program when you can reach all of the stakeholders that are relevant in your case. Because when we even appealing to one of the audience, there are always indirect surrounding whom you also have to cover. Like if we know that for UNICEF, child is in the center of all the communication, but only communicative child is not something that will solve all the issues. And like half of the all communication and all the programming is about other audiences that are in touch with them on daily basis. And so it's kind of, spoiler about tomorrow.
We will share the results so you can check it and use it for your programming. And we hope we will together create more interesting and engaging formats that will help us to form these safe behaviors among Ukrainians. Thank you.
Excellent, and thank you for the presentation. Really important information. Even though it's from December, the DRC and HI CAP survey done right now will complement this, but this is already incredibly helpful for us. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for incentivizing people to come tomorrow. It will become more engaging after the day. I will keep you up here if there's any questions, perhaps, from the people in person or anybody online.
We don't see anything because of the lamps. If you see something.
I see somebody might be online, no? Or in person? Yeah, we can't see you well enough, so please make you...
There is one hand.
There is
yes.
one hand that's waving over there. Excellent. Go for it.
Thanks for your presentation and research. It's really helpful. I just wanted to ask, maybe you have data from rich sources. Children receive information about mine dangers, and maybe you know or you have some insights which sources do they trust more? I mean, social media, parents, teachers.
By the way, we asked them. There was one part of this research dedicated to the source of information, but we didn't include because it was more about behaviors. So most of them use still digital assets whenever the connection allow this. And we do understand that Telegram right now is the best source of information for them. However, Viber is for adults. So for that reason, for instance, in UNICEF, we have channels here and there for different audience. But for Telegram, there is no need for you to establish your own channel. The best way when children get this information in a native way, it calls, in professional language, it calls shilling. Don't ask me why. But when you are getting some type of information and you want to spread this between different channels in telegrams, so it's called shilling. So the point for you is to disseminate this information through these channels, but also to pack this in the way that when it will be interesting for them. Just the message as itself doesn't work many years already. What we use collaboration with the bloggers from TikTok. If it's about this audience, which is about 8 and 8 plus, I would say, yes, because 8 years old children already in TikTok. We don't use Instagram for adolescents or for young children at all, because Instagram is for youngsters and elder, and for how we call them, by the way, we have name for them, young adults, youngsters and adults, okay, because there is a segregation in our organization. So the best way is to create content which is interesting for them and to put your messages there. There was a very good case in Global EORE working group showing that the best way when you want to penetrate somewhere like an app, you don't need to create your own app on EORE. And we have already cases from South Asia when it shows that it doesn't work. You have to add this topic to already or either existing app or to contribute to the new one where the topic will be something else. In that case, it was about football. So you have to just make like a pop-up messages or etc. And we really support this because when we were doing the summer safe vacation campaign in summer, we also collaborate, we create memes. Like imagine we as adults creating memes, but we had to create memes in TikTok, making laugh on what that dangerous behavior is not cool anymore, and what is cool is to be in safety, and what is the safety now. And so bloggers, influencers with whom you collaborate and you pack this. We were doing also collaboration with Ukrainian singer Onuka. Some of you might know her. So she changed the lyrics of your very famous song and put their information on the safe behavior. And we have created collaboration with TikTok influencers where they have to make the challenge, dance challenge, using this song. And the children have to repeat this. And by repeating, they are also moving, they are remembering the rules, and they're memorizing the lyrics as well. So this is the reality where we live currently, when we have more digitally, but when it comes about marginalized communities where you are very limited in devices or network connection, etc., this is something that we will probably announce in a few weeks. But those mobile teams, they are vital and they are important. And face-to-face, in this case, will be the best, but you have to set up their safe surrounding for those children when you come to these marginalized communities. They are the ones who have seen more than you, they're the ones who are dealing with these dangers on the daily basis. So when you come and you say for you to the person that it's, oh, you know, that's danger, it doesn't work. You have to pack it in some kind of edutainment. Usually what UNICEF do, we have during the first months of innovation, we have created a numbers of working books where each of the book is covering 4 content pillars, as we say, because when UNICEF is communicating their EORE, we are saying all the time the way the UXO looks like in landmines. We will never say the names. We avoid this already. It was proven and shown that it doesn't work with children memory. We are only drawing attention to the colors, to the shape, from what material it is produced, and the look and the way it looks like, and to make us association with this. And then we say the second vector is about locations where you can spot of this. And when you come to this community, you understand that it might be everywhere. So location is just you have to slightly deliver to them through some kind of task. So this working book, when you open up, sorry, I don't have it with me today, but probably tomorrow we will bring that with us, so you will see. So there you are doing like the task, you know. In my childhood, I used this a lot for different matters. And you open up one of the page, and then there is a task for you. And while you're doing this task, you acknowledge yourself with all of the, familiarize yourself with all of the content there, and also memorizing what has to do and what is the safer behavior. And the third pillar is about the markings, official and unofficial. We have to teach the children them. Also, with marking is also the big issue in the country so far. We will need years to mark everything. And the fourth one is about safe behavior. So you have to pack all of these 4 content vectors in something that will be readable and interesting for a child and memorized, and then it's not leaflet. So for that reason, kind of edutainment is the best tool here. And maybe, Svetlana, we have omit something from what we do for children in terms of the where they get the source of information. There is YouTube for them, definitely, Instagram for the young adult, Telegram as not the source of news as for us adults, it's a source of funny news and stories. And so we, for instance, we created stickers for Telegram for children with dog patron, with the safe behavior messages, but they are very native. They're native, so it's not doesn't look like don't approach. There are other messages there, but which reflect the main rules.
Yeah, and the last thing that may be important to add, they do see the gaming live streams. This is the only things that we didn't do yet. We haven't used them yet for this EORE materials, but they are watching a lot of streamers that just stream their the way they play games. Sometimes it's against our rules because we can't collaborate with them, and for many, like, they are violating a lot of things. But this is what children and teenagers especially watch constantly. Maybe there are other questions?
Yeah, excellent. You are opening quite a lot of good the discussions points that are coming up tomorrow. So we're going to talk about risk education materials, specifically a section on that. We'll talk about digital risk education tomorrow. There's more presentation coming up on those topics, so stay tuned.
Spoilers.
Spoilers, yeah. Any other questions, perhaps? We still have a few more minutes before lunch, so anything of interest. But do wave quite high, because we can't see you here from the stage. Anything online, perhaps? Nothing from online, okay.
Maybe a question from your friends, not from you.
I have one question, if you'll allow me. I remember last year at one point, we were told that the number 101 might be abolished. Is that still in process, or has it
not yet? Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, but there is no information. I mean, in Ukraine, we have a big trend of changing the government, changing the heads of the important structures, etc. So far, 101 is effective and is the main one where we redirect referral people. Yes, at some point it was planned before 2022 that 112 will substitute, that will replace it. But so far, no. And as long there is no such information from the government, we really encourage you to stick with the 101.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you as well. But it is important for the community to know in advance, although this is not something for you to, but for the government to be aware, because while you might not encourage leaflets, we have been distributing quite a lot of them.
We did it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have a lot of them.
And all of them will have 101 on it. So yes, let's hope for a long transition once they decide that. And thank you very much for the presentations and coming up earlier as planned. So thank you for the flexibility. I invite everybody for lunch in 10 minutes. So if lunch is not yet ready, it will be in 10 minutes. And at that point, we will then reconvene at 2 o'clock Ukraine time. Thank you very much.
So we have to get back by 2 here, right?
Correct. Hello, everybody. We're slowly starting. So everybody still sitting, standing. Please do sit down. And I will call Yaroslav from the Mine Action Center in Chernihiv to join me up here, please. Mr. Yaroslav, welcome to the stage from the Mine Action Center in Chernihiv. Welcome, sir. Thank you for coming. Okay. A minute more for people to settle down. This is now going to become the more interactive session, hopefully. We've heard a lot about the presentation, a lot of presentations before. We now understand what is the setting after 18 months. And so now we will be looking more into the discussion. And here, in fact, you are most important on top of the presenters here. What we will do with every section of discussions is that we will have a couple of presentations to illustrate the bigger points. And that will hopefully speed up the discussion. And then we will also review the survey that DRC did of all mine action operators in Ukraine on the specific topic that we're talking about. And you'll see the results of several sections and the opinion we had. And that hopefully, again, will encourage you to then comment in the last section, which will be the discussion point. We understand that it's a big group. It's both online and offline. We have various organizations, so it's not the easiest to speak up and discuss. So there is, first of all, no need for you to tell us who you are or who you work for. If that makes you uncomfortable, you can, and happy days for that. But we really want for you to just express your opinion about the topic. And then secondly, we also understand that speaking up in public, not everybody's comfortable with that. And so in your folders, you will find a QR code for the online survey. And so if you have something to add, you can also scan this and add it in the respective section. And so that is another option for you to provide your feedback on the topic. And then afterwards, we'll analyze everything and then share the analytics, but it will be anonymous, so you don't have anything to concern yourself with. I'll ask the technical support to put the link here also in the Zoom platform, so for people who are online to take it. And so in this next section, sorry. One back. No, sorry. Technical issues today. And one more. Maybe you can help me put the next slide of the presentation on. Excellent. Thank you very much. This is what we'll be looking at. It's not exclusively what we'll be looking at, but these are sort of the points that were interesting to us as a community when we were designing the workshop. So you can see we will look at how satisfied we are with the level of coordination on risk education here in Ukraine. We'll look at if we have used the coordination mechanisms to get more information for our programming. We'll look if the accreditation for mine action operators has posed a challenge for our emergency responses, and then we'll look if there's been gaps in the monitoring of those providers of risk education that are not accredited mine action operators. And then, of course, anything else that pops to mind under this broad discussion point of coordination and monitoring. And so this is to set your sort of thoughts in, and with that, I will pass the floor to Yaroslav over here from the Mine Action Center in Chernihiv, who's got his own presentation and will share the lessons learned on the topic at hand. Thank you.
Доброго дня. Я помічник
I'm the deputy head of the Chernihiv Mine Action Center. Our manager had the intention of visiting this event in person, but since there is martial law and he is a military, his ability to plan his time is limited. So today it will be me who will present to you the mine action activity implemented through centers like ours. We were established in July 2021. So we are probably the youngest center of such type if we compare it with the center in Kamenets-Podilsky, but still we've been there since 2021, and we were staffed with newly hired people. We were getting ready for further accreditation as an inspection and assessment body, and the tasks of our center are defined by Article 25 of Ukraine's law on mine action. In total, there are 17 different tasks that have to do with planning and implementation of mine action, and one of them has to do with a certification of mine action operators. So overall, the international operators that started operating in Ukraine, they probably were surprised with this certification procedure because, well, as far as I am aware, it is called accreditation in other places, and sometimes it's the national centers that have to do this, but Ukraine, as always, has its own vision. So there is the classic due diligence mechanism, which then proceeds with certification and sometimes quality control of the demined land. So the certificate on accreditation was received by us last year, and our accreditation includes technical service, non-technical service, manual demining, clearance of the territories of combat operations and EORE. So this is something for which we have proven our competence before the National Accreditation Agency, and this year our scope was broadened, and right now we can certify operators for technical demining and also identification and disposal of EOD. So in total, if we consider the 3 accredited centers, the general algorithm of certification is more or less the same. So it starts with the application, consideration of the documents provided, assessment of the eligibility of the operator, then decision making, and monitoring of mine action operators. So it is quite obvious that before an application is submitted, a set of documents needs to be collected to apply. So the statutory documents on the quality management in the company, information about the staff and technical equipment, and also the standard operating procedures concerning the processes that an organization implements. And then we are analyzing the information and documents provided. And also in this process, we consider the documentation, we can see if the organization matches the standard 8820 on mine action. And in this assessment, the staff of the assessment body visits the premises of the organization, makes the assessment of the necessary records, assesses the competence of the staff, and also observes how the processes are implemented by the operator. So then goes the final step in the primary certification, which is decision making. The decision about the competence of the operator is being made if the resources are sufficient. And this is a process of certification monitoring defined by the law of Ukraine. And after that, there is the systematic process of surveillance to make sure that the decision made about the operator was the right one. So the monitoring is happening according to the certification agreement signed with the operator, and such monitoring is happening once a year as a rule. So there are also ad hoc monitorings which may happen guided by the National Mine Action Authority, or that can be triggered by some specific incidents. So this was brief information about the certification process. The certificate is valid for a certain time. It depends on the body that issues it. As far as I'm aware, if one is certified in Kamianets-Podilsky, they are first certified for 1 year. Then goes the procedure that we are using. I issued the certificate for 3 years and subsequently also for 5 years. So this was some brief information about certification.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. I believe our next speaker, Major Antoniuk from the Mine Action Center in Kamenets-Podilsky, will join online. So if we can find him in the platform and give him the floor. Excellent. Welcome. And you are free to speak. Thank you.
I'm Major Bogdan Antoniuk, responsible for certification section of Kamenets-Podilsky Center. So speaking of the certification body, we have been working as a certification body since 2018. And we were first accredited in August 2018. So it's been 5 years since we've been in this system. We have been under surveillance of the national agency, and this year we were accredited once again, so we have been accredited for another 5 years of activity. So a few words about certification processes. I basically agree with everything shared right now by my colleague from Chernihiv. The procedure we are using is more or less the same. And this is the way it's happening in any center right now. A few words about the operators that are working right now. We can tell that the numbers of the operators are growing by the day, and the workload for certification bodies is also increasing. So yeah, basically the certification procedure in our certification body is the same as in Chernihiv, as was presented to you right now. I fully agree with Yaroslav. The primary certification here is happening for 1 year. The next certification of the operator is going to be valid for 5 years. And as for the issues with certification, in one of the areas we are certifying it, which is EORE. This is one of the simpler processes, but it is in a way an inseparable part of mine action. And therefore, we are certifying in this area. Currently, 6 operators have been certified by our center. And so in the assessment of the documents, the applications, and also during the on-site assessment, we had certain issues because our the standard implemented here in Ukraine, it is not yet fully developed. There are no specific requirements for this process, and the work is still underway. So speaking of the monitoring of mine action operators, as it was mentioned right now we are basically performing the surveillance function to see if the operators are performing to the standards that we are going to meet. So I could also briefly discuss the issues identified in the monitoring process. This includes in some operators the lack of procedure for staff training. There is sometimes lack of certain documents. Also, in their EORE activities, they do not include the pre-tests and post-tests. So these are some of the findings that have been identified, and I believe the pre-tests and post-tests are some of the crucial elements of the EORE activities, because we need to be able to assess the improvement of this knowledge that the audience has. So that's basically it from me, and sorry for not being able to take part in your meeting in person, because currently I am doing assessment for an organization that wants to become a certified mine action operator. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. Thank you.
And thank you for speaking, regardless of being in the field. If you're able to continue being logged in, together also with Yaroslav and our next presenter, there might be some questions which we'd love to hear your opinions of. And then we will go now to our third presenter, which are Katya and Victoria from the Swiss Foundation for Mine Action, FSD, who will also log in online. So once we locate them, they will, I believe, share their presentation.
Добрий день.
We see you, and I believe we hear you as well, so the floor is yours.
Дякую.
Thank you, everyone. And I am Victoria. I'm a supervisor of FSD in Ukraine. And so first and foremost, I would like to express gratitude to DRC for inviting us to take part. I'm grateful to every organization sharing their experience, because currently it is very important, it is invaluable. And I would like also to share the experience of our organization, FSD, in coordination and monitoring of EORE. So the Swedish Mine Action Fund is a non-commercial, non-political and independent organization. The head office is located in Geneva, and since 2015 we started working in Donetsk and Luhansk, and right now we are certified mine action operator. So mainly we are currently focusing our activities on Chernihiv region. That's where one of our offices is, and also certain districts of Kharkiv region. And speaking of coordination and monitoring, they are inseparable components of the EORE system, implemented on different levels and by different means. So coordination helps us to define the main EORE priorities, also looking for the potential challenges and solutions, because once in a while we are having certain challenges. And also there is monitoring and assessment of the national programs. And also we need to make the assessment for the improvement of the effectiveness of EORE operations. So we believe there are 4 steps here, and defining the vision, strategic goals, operational goals, and making up the roadmap consisting of projects and activities. So, yeah, briefly about each of the steps. Our vision, this is the goal we have before us. We want to establish the proper awareness about the safe behavior, ability to identify dangerous objects and develop the safe behaviors, making sure that our beneficiaries truly keep this knowledge with them. We want to be sure that even if the project is over, they are still able to use this knowledge and skills. So after that, we proceed with our strategic goals, and we are planning to engage a broad number of beneficiaries to take part in our activities so that we can ensure behavior change in them. We want to make sure that these changes are not local. They are not limited to some specific community or region. We want to know that the IDPs are well prepared in case they want to come back to their regions. So having defined our operational goals, we defined the target groups, and this starts from the deoccupied communities. So the groups include students, well, starting from the primary school, but also continuing through secondary school and university students. We developed some different sets of messages, such as the standards of the new Ukrainian school, which are taken into consideration for developing messages for children. Also, we target our messages for agricultural workers because these are the people having direct contact with the polluted territories. However, it's very difficult to interact with agricultural workers during the active agricultural periods, such as sowing and harvesting. That's where when these people are busy and they cannot spend any time with us then. But otherwise, we are developing the materials for them to make sure that this information is available in the offices of the agricultural companies. And also we are focusing a lot on forestries because, again, their staff also works on the polluted territories. Also, the municipal enterprises, the critical infrastructure staff, quite often this is also about being forced to work in such conditions, and this is why we make awareness sessions available to them. Also, we work with the communities. We work with internally displaced people, and we also then define the specific projects and activities we can put into practice. We can have some study sessions in the online and offline formats. We are very much limited in our work in the 20 kilometers zone, and we are doing the best to work online and offline. We work offline with the agricultural and critical infrastructure stuff, and also with the forestry. A big share of our activity is work in the communities, work with the IDPs. And this is something that is happening on a regular basis, and the teams are visiting the territories they are working in, and they are providing their informing activities there. So one more type of activities that we are providing is different celebrations. Of course, we need to keep in mind the safety and security issues, because of which such events are not happening very frequently, but still we are having them. So there are game-like formats for children at conference-like formats for adults, and also there are some emergency EORE activities, which we are also doing sometimes, like in the case of a Kakhovka dam explosion. And in that case, we very quickly created teams and sent them to the territories hosting big numbers of IDPs, such as Odessa, Mykolaiv, and Lviv. We delivered our information very quickly because we understood that these people would be coming back, some of them. And so after defining priorities, we are defining our roadmap, which includes the coordination with the government and non-governmental organizations, and also internal coordination. So these two things are never really separate from each other, and they are always interconnected. So we always consider them together. So our coordination with government authorities and non-governmental organization is as active as it can be. That's our intention. And we were allocated with certain regions and specific communities, specifically Chernihiv and Kharkiv regions, and that's where we are focusing our activities. But of course, our EORE activities are not strictly limited to these regions, and we are also working in other regions, and we are then coordinating with the authorities. So such a center works in Kharkiv, and this helps us understand the issues and processes of EORE and the specific territory. And also we work with the village councils, with the town councils, because well, coordination with the local authorities is one of the important priorities. On a monthly basis, we also hold meetings with NGOs in the online format, and also offline meetings with some of the operators. So the majority of such cases of cooperation were quite successful, and we hope this can continue. So also in parallel with that, we are doing internal coordination. We are defining the areas of active combat operations and the needs of the communities. At this stage, we are interacting with local authorities. We are defining the needs of the communities. We study the statistics about the incidents that have taken place in the specific community, and we are using the ISMA platform to see which operators have worked there already to properly coordinate this work that there. Also, one more important part of this informing effort is, for instance, when we started to work in Chernihiv region, our teams work together with NTS teams in the specific areas. So this territory has been deoccupied very recently, so the EORE teams were informing the local residents about the intended purposes we had for the locals to understand why we were there. So along with telling people about mine safety, we were also talking about ourselves. So we also have small conferences with participation of the NTS teams, or they can share their experience from there. And one more important element is defining priorities in the areas we work in. So, for instance, we work closely in Ivanivska, a territorial community in Chernihiv region. That's where they have strengthened the system for informing the miners about the items they are aware about. So for the internal data collection and statistics, we are using Kova software, which helps us to collect daily statistics. And this platform or program, it duplicates data from the survey, but it's a bit extended. And so on a daily basis, we are collecting two identical sets of data. Also on a weekly basis, we and so compare that with our priorities, and we work to accomplish the planned results. So also we have the following for monitoring criteria. We have internal and external monitoring, and the external monitoring is, well, it includes the assessment by the supervisor at the allocations. So that's where we can hear from the locals how the informing is happening. The communication with them is happening through the forum, and quite often there are challenges with that for technical reasons, sometimes because of the lack of internet access. So in some cases, they can fill out this form online, sometimes offline. Also, there are pre-tests and post-tests that we are using at school. We are using the Kaput service And this is how we are doing our pre-tests and post-tests to assess the effectiveness of our education. So also we have internal quality control unit, which checks the efforts once a month. And then we are also using this for the thank you.
Excellent. Thank you from our side as well for this illustration of how FSD engages with coordination, and to the previous speakers from the Mine Action Centers who talked a little bit about monitoring and accreditation. You're welcome to stay here. There might be some questions for FSD at the end. And also, of course, we'd love to hear your opinion about the next portion of this section, which will be the survey that DRC conducted. If I can ask technical support to share the presentation again, I will then get you through the data of how we found, at least in terms of the mine action operators in Ukraine, the topic of monitoring and coordination. And so when we asked all mine action operators here in Ukraine, how would they rate the level of coordination when it comes to risk education programming, this is the result we got. It is 3.4 scale of 5. And so it is higher than average, but not too much. So there is room there for improvement, and today is a great opportunity for you to also express what could be done better, or if you disagree with any of this data. So today will be that perfect opportunity to us to learn how we can carry on. On the next question, if coordination mechanisms, and we're talking here about the Oblast coordination mechanisms, the National Mine Action Authorities coordination mechanisms, the mechanisms that the Mine Action Area of Responsibility helps us with, all of those, or any other that you have in mind, have they ensured that there is information readily available on the context as well as existing capabilities? We can see that it's fairly evenly split between yes and no, with more of us agreeing that has been true. And then on the last two questions, has risk education accreditation posed any challenges for our emergency response? Because the whole workshop does talk about emergency risk education. And so a bit surprisingly for me, actually, most of us have said that it has not been challenging to respond in an emergency setting because of accreditation and how long it usually has taken. And then final question, and this has been on our mind for quite a while, and that's why also we wanted to ask it. Have there been gaps in monitoring those providers of risk education in Ukraine that are not accredited as mine action operators? And you can see that unanimously as a community, we believe that there is certainly a gap in monitoring risk education providers who do not have the accreditation. And so now I'll give the floor to everybody here in the room, anybody here online as well, to comment on this, to add your point of view, your experience, anything essentially. Just raise your hand and we'll have somebody give you a microphone. Any volunteers? Excellent. We have a volunteer over there. May we get some support with a microphone? I think you have to raise your hand again to show who you are. Perfect. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to reflect on the last one slide about how there have been any gaps in monitoring providers of EORE that are not accredited by as mine action operator. I guess everyone feels the same pain here, not only about the process, but how to act, in what way we should report and to whom. And if we do understand that those CSO, let's call them this way, but because usually these are CSO, they do prohibit some severe rules and standards on EORE, so to whom we should report. whether it should be National Management Authority or National Management Center, local government authority. This is the open floor for discussion, how everyone thinks. Because if we do see, and I do see, what is my next action? Yeah, how should I act?
It is a very good question. I don't have an answer to that, but maybe as a community, we have some thoughts. Yeah, but we should ask questions like that indeed. So thank you for it.
Yeah, and in this case here is the National Management Center is still here with us today. If yes, if we do report to you, whether they will be happy with this and know how to act afterwards. That's the thing, not only to collect this information, those inputs.
Perhaps indeed, if the Mine Action Center representatives, either online or in person, could reflect on that, how could we as a community better sort of go about this challenge? And I will get you a microphone, or yeah, you can join.
Yeah, and then afterwards I have one more.
There you go.
То, що стосується цього питання про моніторинг операторів, які не
the operators who are not certified yet. According to the Ukrainian legislation on mine action, all the mine action is performed by organizations that have been certified. So once the organization gets the positive decision on their certification, after that the assessment organs, they inform our secretariat in written, and the data is available on the Ministry of Defense website. And in order to take part in the mining activity or any mine action, the operator contacts us because we are, according to the law, taking part in mine action planning, and we even did have a department for that. And that department also interacts with information management department. They register this database in IMSMACOR, and this is how the operator, depending on their resources and opportunities, get a certain allocated territory, and all the reporting becomes available, and it becomes visible what has been provided where. On a weekly basis, reporting is made by this organization. They are providing their plans for the upcoming week. So if any organization is doing the works and the organization is not certified, well, no one sees them. They are doing this at their own risk, and such activity is not legal. Yes, such organization is not legal, but these organizations cooperate with government institutions which are authorized to do this, such as the State Emergency Service. Well, yeah, State Emergency Service, that's a separate story, and I cannot fully comment on their activity because in and of itself, informing of the population, it is the function of the State Emergency Service. But how exactly they do this, how they are selecting organizations doing that, well, that's their own issue. So yeah, but you as the center who has the obligation to monitor such activities, so you do not have powers to monitor those who are not a registered operator. Yeah, that's exactly true. We are not a law enforcement body. We cannot do that. We can only monitor legal activities of accredited organizations, which means there is a gap in the law in terms of monitoring. And it needs to be updated because we are telling it's a bad thing that there are non-accredited providers, but we are not doing anything to address the issue. Well, here in Ukraine, there was the function of the general prosecutor's oversight. In that case, it was the prosecutor who was doing this function. Right now, it's not happening. Speaking of the legal gaps, of course, nothing can be ideal in this world. And well, we are working directly with the Secretariat of the Mine Action Authority. We can provide our proposals concerning the improvement of standards and legislation, and we'll see how it unfolds over time. Yeah, thank you for being so optimistic.
I just say that it's not very sounds optimistic, inspiring for us.
Thank you very much, and for answering this question. It is a topic to definitely look at and resolve. So we're very happy that that now this has been sort of brought to your attention as well. We do see them. We will go into communities to do risk education, and we will be told by the community that some risk education had been provided by an organization we never heard of. And so for us, it was also good to know if there is a mechanism to report that, because it could be problematic, and also it does create duplication. And so I also am very hopeful that going forward, these sort of things can also be looked at and amended. Thank you very much for that. Do we have any other questions, perhaps? Any other reflections on any topics that pertain to monitoring and coordination? Perhaps anybody online?
Nick.
Oh, sorry, go for it. Thank you very much, Caitlin.
Hi, Caitlin from Humanity and Inclusion, Handicap International. I have a couple points. I don't know if I should make both of them at once. I'll start with one and see how it goes. I want to go back to the presentation that Marie made this morning when talking about the coordination structure in Ukraine. Marie? Okay. So there were a few challenges that Marie had highlighted. One of them was duplication of efforts, EORE efforts, and another one was need to reach more people with EORE. On the surface, these seem to be at each other, but I think it comes down to a couple issues. One of those is questions as to how tasking is operating. So this is a challenge that has come up a lot for those actors that are certified. Many of us are getting our priorities or our tasking instructions from different sources, whether it's different mine action centers or different bodies at oblast level or even local community level. So first, there's a question in terms of how are we at this level to make sure that we are already starting to work in different areas. But then the big question to me is, and it's linked to these non-accredited organizations, if we are talking about trying to reach areas that most NGOs cannot go to with their own staff due to security restrictions, due to lack of permissions, but there are local organizations going into these areas. How can certified operators work with those organizations to ensure that they can provide quality EORE being certified given the legal situation in Ukraine? And what is the threshold when an activity comes within the bounds that it needs to be certified? So I think the translation of EORE in the mine action law is informing populations about the risks associated with mines and ERW. that can be interpreted in a really broad level of ways. So is certification required just to deliver EORE sessions, or are there ways that we can find of working within the bounds of the law to be able to expand our reach through different volunteer networks or organizations that don't have certification?
Excellent points, Caitlin. Thank you very much for that. Indeed, it is a double-raised sword. In one way, we'd like to support the National Mine Action Authority and the accreditation process, and most of us in this room had gone through it, but there are limitations to having that accreditation, and the 20-kilometer line is a good example. And this is where the CSO community, which is unaccredited, sure, but perhaps therefore does not have the legal liability that mine action operator has the access. So it's a complex topic indeed. Any other points, reflections, any solutions? Anything from online community? No? Give it one more try. Any courageous person wants
Я
to
хочу
express them?
уточнити, де в Україні є території, які не можуть охопити оператори.
In Ukraine that cannot be covered by mine action operators. Where are these territories?
Was the question, what are the territories that mine action operators cannot reach?
Території, які не можуть бути охоплені оператором.
20-kilometer line from the current front line that mine action operators are not allowed to operate in, no matter the activity.
Я перепрошую, запитання повторіть.
So, yeah, could you please repeat the question? So, I'm Sergey from the Association of the
У нас в Україні є території, на яких не можуть працювати оператори протимінної діяльності.
where mine action operators cannot operate, but NGOs, other NGOs can operate. Yeah, most probably it's about the 20-kilometer zone, but yes, this is correct. It is the 20 kilometers zone. The operators are not operating there, according to the order by the Minister of Defense. The civil society organizations who are not operators, they can operate at their own risk, but we should also consider the effectiveness and evidence behind their work. They are working according to their own standards, which no one monitors. We don't know who is the staff in those organizations. They are not included in the system of planning and analysis of mine action. Yes, they work there, but do they do it well? Do they do their activities well? Oh, we don't know that.
Excellent. That is a good point as well, indeed. It is, not to my knowledge at least, mine action activities is the only activity that has this limitation. DRC is a good example, and there's other examples surely in this room, where we do have activities that are non-mine action activities, and those can be done in the 20-kilometer line. It is just the mine action ones that cannot. So that's certainly something that the accreditation limits us in doing. Any other reflection point? I see your hand. I'm really sorry if you're raising your hand. It's difficult for me to see because of the light. So be very vocal in waving. I think that's Patrick, right?
Yep, you
Go
got
for
it. Yeah, I just wanted to say one of the, excuse me, a potential workaround that we've found in getting access to other areas is doing training of trainers with people who have more access to those areas. So working with local organizations, they go in there, or also with state emergency service and local police. It's a lot more labor and cost intensive than standard EORE, because I mean, a typical EORE session is 1 hour, whereas training of trainers for us takes 4 days altogether. So it's not the most direct workaround, but a potential one.
Excellent. If I may have a follow-up question for you, because at DRC we did a similar thing last year with 4 NGOs, 3 local and 1 international, and we requested guidance from the National Mine Action Authority as to how to build capacity of local NGOs in risk education, and we were given quite a lot of rules to follow when providing TOTs to CSOs, for example. And I'm thinking here, they work then under our accreditation. We have to perform their quality management. We have to do their information management, and so on and so forth. Is this something that you also had a challenge with? Because this really, we stopped it at 4 NGOs. This is where we reached our own resources. Maybe you found a different solution to this.
Yeah, no, honestly, that's also been a challenge for us, is doing the quality management, because we don't have access into those areas to go back and double check. So that is still something we're working on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any other contributions from anybody? Anybody online, perhaps? I don't see anybody else. Do correct me if I'm mistaken. If that is all, that we will finish a little early today. Perhaps it is the after lunch time that makes us all a bit tired. But we do have 4 more discussions tomorrow to go through. And so I encourage you tomorrow then to also continue being active in providing your feedback on things that we discuss. Then we will go to our last section, which is to recap day 1 very shortly, and just to review what is on the agenda for tomorrow. And so I will just ask technical support. And thank you very much also for your help. If I can get my presentation back, excellent. And this will be the last section of the day. And if you look at what we've gone through today, we have essentially set the scene of what has happened in Ukraine in the past 18 months in terms of explosive ordnance contamination. We heard it from the National Mine Action Authority on the extent or the likely extent of EU contamination as surveying continues. We have heard it from also about the threat and the accidents that have happened from the NMA. We heard from the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights also on casualties and accidents outside of the sort of IMA's definition of explosive ordnance. And then we looked also at the activities that have happened, both from the mine action operators in Ukraine, as well as from different state bodies, the State Emergency Services of Ukraine, by far the biggest provider of risk education, as well as the Ministry of Temporary Occupied Territories. And then thank you very much to UNICEF for giving us an insight into the knowledges, attitudes, behaviors, and practices of children, caregivers, and parents here in Ukraine, very important for our programming. And then right now, as you have engaged in the first discussion on monitoring and coordination. And so for tomorrow, it is going to be just the last 4 discussion points. And so we will talk about emergency risk education materials, and we'll have Patrick from the Halo Trust and Svetlana and Tanya from UNICEF having 2 presentations, and it will be the same sort of format. We also have the survey on every one of these discussion points to help feed the lessons learned. And then we will talk about risk education for people on the move and those in hard to reach areas, a topic that we just opened up a little bit as well. We have Mikhail, the DRC Risk Education Program Manager that manages the risk education we have in Poland and Moldova. And then Caitlin from Humanity and Inclusion, who will talk about the mobile risk education, as well as Irina from the Ukrainian Mining Association and how they have reached out to hard to reach areas with risk education. And then after lunch, we have Robin, a digital risk education manager from MAG, who will talk about their digital risk education initiatives in Ukraine, and Svetlana and Tanya from UNICEF, and talking a little bit of how to tailor digital risk education for us. And then finally, we have Mikola from the Norwegian People's Aid, talking about integrating conflict preparedness and protection with risk education under the broader topic of how to integrate risk education into the overall humanitarian response. And so quite a packed and interesting day for tomorrow as well. You're very much welcomed to come. We start at the same time, 9 o'clock in the morning for registration. And just to repeat, this is being recorded. And so all of it will be shared with everybody who's registered, and it will be put on the YouTube channel of DRC here in Ukraine. So you can also share it with anybody who's interested. And with that, I will conclude today's workshop and wish you a nice rest of the day. Thank you very much.